Yeah. No. Sorry. It can. I mean, in the last class I had to redirect somebody to take notes, and oops, what's going on there? Yeah, and that's all right. I'm sure he won't. He won't be going through the old lectures. And then an email popped up that was kind of sensitive, and I had to just throw the whole recording out. So, okay, England and the Tudors. Yeah, audio. Audio. Records the audio and the screen.
Hey, I made it onto a recording.
Hey, stop that.
Hello, Internet.
Good, let's pull it together. Okay, so in the time period we're talking about, ruling families are kind of the way that people go. One thing you'll find sort of shocking, or may find shocking, is that when people think about their rulers, the nationality, or what, there isn't even a concept of nationality yet, so don't even kind of work that in. When we talk about the English, we're not talking about people that have a flag for England, and they are English in some ways, but their ruler is not always important. Case in point, even today's Queen Elizabeth of England is descended from a German-speaking family of the state of Hanover. So anyway, so that's not too strange for Europeans. It's enshrined in the U.S. Constitution that you have to be a natural-born U.S. citizen to be president of the country. Anyway, so ruling families are kind of the word of the day. All right, so let's take a look at England. Let me try to give you an idea of what's going on here. If you're in Europe, we talked about how king's power or queens were backed by the power of the church. This is called divine right of kings. So divine right means, hey, who put you in charge? God put me in charge. How do we know? The church says so. This doesn't mean that the church elects kings. It just means that if a king is kind of doing right by the church, and we have to believe that upon reflection of the cardinals and the popes, they would pray and seek God's will in this, and what they found was that, okay, we're going to back that king. Now, if that king lost God's favor, then doesn't mean they didn't get to be king anymore, it just meant the church took away their backing, which could result in them not being king if somebody was willing to try to overthrow them. In England, you don't have as much divine right of kings. There's still a religious element tied into it, meaning that kings, are sort of stand for God on earth and are put in place, but it's not unlimited rule by the king, and it's not totally backed by the Catholic Church. There are also some limitations on the king's power. 1215, way back, was signed something called the Magna Carta. This was by the nobles forced onto the King of England, in which he had to agree to limit his power. It doesn't give rights to typical people like peasants, and that's not really in the mix just yet. Nothing like the American Constitution, but it does limit the power of the king so that the king is not ruling with absolute authority. Okay, so the Tudors that we're going to talk about today were considered hardworking, able, popular, at least the good ones. There were some ones that weren't very good, and they have lots of family issues going on here. Imagine this, Queen Elizabeth I of England, who we'll talk about later. Long story short, what's the family issue here? Daddy accused mommy of treason and incest and had her head chopped off. So complicated. Anyway, so these Tudors are not absolute monarchs like we're going to see with France and Russia. They don't rule with as much power as others. The first one, now most of the kings and queens we're going to talk about come to power after huge wars. And the thing about these wars is that often people are seeking someone who could bring stability and peace. And that's usually why these families hold on. And any concept of kings as ruling in a way that gives rights to their people, not there just yet, okay? So you get Henry VII first. Pretty strong guy, did pretty well. Comes into power after the War of the Roses, which we won't get into. He starts the trend of keeping England out of other people's wars as much as possible. Even though we think of England as an ally in World War I and World War II, that is really, they didn't want those wars. They didn't want to be involved in them, and throughout England's history, we'll see why. Okay, here's Henry VIII. Big guy. Big eater. All right. Late in his life, he had an ulcer in his leg that they began to treat by continually opening it to try to let out the bad humors. Yeah, if you don't believe in progress, that was the state of medical care back then. They weren't stupid. They just didn't know what caused infection. You automatically, by washing your hands, have tons more information than they did back then. Anyway, Henry, pretty powerful ruler, marries 6 times, splits the Anglican Church from the Catholic Church, becomes the head of the Anglican Church, God's, regent on earth for the Anglican Church. So what goes on? This is the famous what happened to Henry's 6 wives. Okay, first marriage, Catherine of Aragon, Spanish queen. A lot of times those marriages are almost political alliances to try to keep the countries from going to war with each other. Questions so far? Okay, take notes as best you can, and I'll try to get you packed when we finish. So this gets annulled because Catherine reaches an age where she could no longer bear children. Henry doesn't have a male heir. He wants to get rid of her. He goes to the Catholic Church for an annulment, which means that the marriage never occurred, basically. The Catholic Church refuses. And it wasn't as simple as I'm about to say, like Henry was just like, fine, I don't want to be in the Catholic Church. But through different ways, they found ways to annul the marriage, and Catherine of Aragon leaves. Okay? He kind of had his eye on Anne Boleyn at that point. She was French, she was younger, and Henry was not a celibate guy, let's put it that way. And so he, eventually marries Anne Boleyn. Hey, here's some complication. Eventually, she doesn't produce a male heir either. I keep saying produces if it was just her. We start to think that maybe it was Henry. But anyway, Henry saw it that way. Uh-oh, no male heir. What am I going to do? What can we do now? Well, what they came up with was basically some trumped up charges that Anne had slept with her brother. This is a problem for lots of reasons. First off, the disgust that would have pervaded everybody's mindset at that time. Second, the fact that sleeping with a queen, attempting to do that could result in an heir that could be passed off as King Henry's at first. But then when Henry dies, they say, aha, you are not the father. And so now all of a sudden, whoever fathered that child with Anne Boleyn could possibly be the next king. So it's a little more complicated. So she's not just accused of incest, but of treason, trying to take down the king. She gets convicted. She almost certainly didn't do it, but she gets convicted, gets her head chopped off, and on to the next queen. Jane Seymour gives Henry a son, but she dies 2 weeks later. Henry decides, okay, I can't be alone. So he basically goes into the English, that time's version of Tinder, and instead of having pictures of someone, he sends his portraiture off to Flanders, which is over the coast in what's modern-day Belgium. He paints Anne of Cleves. The painting comes back, and he says, wow, okay, swipe. Is it swipe right? Never used it. Sorry. Yeah. So he swipes right. They go and they get her. They get married in proxy, basically, married without seeing each other at first. She arrives on a boat, lands, and Henry goes. Basically, the recording of what he said was that he said that she looked like a horse. So not meant to last. New phrase? Catfish. So I lost it. Yeah, she looked like a horse, so that marriage doesn't last. What do? Oh, they stay friends. They probably did not consummate the marriage, all right? So the annulment was a little bit simpler then. Probably, stayed friends. Apparently he sent her money too, but apparently they wrote letters. I don't know. Anyway, so Catherine Howard, a little less complicated. She gets beheaded too, yada, yada, Catherine Parr. Okay. That's Anne Boleyn, running short on time. Okay, Elizabeth. This is Henry's daughter, Anne Boleyn's daughter too. So, yeah, complicated. She's considered one of the greatest English monarchs ever. She has the loyalty and confidence of her subjects, was queen at 25. She resists marrying in pretty much all cases because, it was like, okay, if you have power, people want to link up with you. It just happens. And Anne Boleyn is queen, and any person that married with her could then become king, and then could basically start his own lineage into the monarchy, basically. She builds up the navy. They win at the Battle of Gravelines against the Spanish, and the English become more and more of a sea power. These are considered some of her biggest successes. She makes this famous speech before the Battle of Gravelines, where she, it's considered a famous speech, but it showed how sort of forward-thinking the English could be, in that it wasn't that they didn't like having a female queen, but it wasn't as scandalous as it could be in some other places at that time. Anyway, she makes this great speech, and the people on that beach never really actually fought, but they win. So, okay, so what are the English relying on? This is called balance of power. What balance of power basically means is that England, in its position as an island off the coast of the continent of Europe, has the singular ability to basically make sure that they don't get tied up in European wars. There are lots of wars. There's religious wars, Protestants and Catholics. There's territorial wars. It's crazy stuff. This runs right up until 1914 in World War I, where the British are really kind of thinking, do we really want to get involved in this? Maybe we just keep to ourselves, let the Germans and the French kind of battle it out and whatever. That's not what happens. Anyway, so the British decide the balance of power is basically that they keep any particular country on the continent from becoming too powerful. Because if a country becomes too powerful, they might be able to get a navy together. They might be able to put some dudes on their boats. They might be able to cross this. I mean, you can swim across this. People have done it. I mean, you don't want to do that, but serious swimmers have swum the English Channel, or swam, whichever it is. Either way, they traveled by water without the assistance of a boat. So you could foresee times where people could simply launch invasions across this, take over England, and set something up. So the British want to avoid that. So when the French get out of control, you call on your allies, the Prussians or the Russians over here. Russia's over there. Prussia's more like up here. Okay. You call on, there's no Italy yet. You call on like the Kingdom of Naples and things like that. So the English keep things there so that nobody becomes too powerful and can take them over. The scariest times in English history are like World War II, when basically Germany ruled the whole continent, are those times where things could go askew. Okay. And they took over Wales, Scotland, and England. 3 minutes. Let's wrap it up. Oh, that's it. What luck. Stop that noise.